Perfect timing. Seriously, David, and I'll follow the rules this time. Like, how long do you want me to talk?
10 minutes or so?
Oh, wow. Okay. There's actually not 10 minutes worth of Lansing stuff to talk about right now. From the Senate side, I think the last time I was here, I gave people sort of a deep dive of the budget process, what's going on there. And that still continues to consume most of the oxygen up in Lansing. There's a little bit of policy work that continues to move forward, but for anyone who didn't hear that before, very brief recap is the budget process starts with a bunch of sub-budgets that are passed out of committees and then come in front of the body and they're voted on. And after that, which during that process, it's all Democrat-led, right? They control the whole state. We as Republicans really just tried at that point to force votes on amendments to make them better, to make the budget better. The Democrats turned down all of those amendments. I think there were 176 proposals we made to say, could we improve it this way? They said no on all of them, and they want to kid people into thinking that this is some sort of bipartisan effort to, serve all people in Michigan. Slimmest majorities in both chambers, 1-seat majorities in each, and they don't want to have any input from the other side on what's going on. So where does that go now? We pass our budgets, the House passes their budgets, we trade, and then this fascinating thing happens where we have a conference committee that's actually supposed to develop the final budget. The conference committee is only supposed to take up and discuss matters where the bills are substantially different in the House and the Senate. So if the House and Senate were to pass bills that were 99% the same, but there was one line that they couldn't agree on, the conference committee should take that line up and they should decide. The conference is a combination from both chambers. So what we do, and in Michigan's government, is we take up the House's bills and then we put a substitute in that says, let's say for instance that the House sends over a budget that's $10 billion for one part of the government. We in the Senate then take that bill up, we put a substitute in that replaces the entire bill with one paragraph saying we're gonna fund this department with $100 next year. $100 total. That makes it plausible then for the conference committee to say, oh, it's actually up to us to decide everything in the budget because the bills are 100% different. There's nothing they agree on. This one said 10 billion, this one said $100. There are no lines in it. One of the fun side effects of that is because we take up bills and we actually vote on them on the floor, bills that say let's fund a department of the government for $100, it gave me an opportunity to finally vote yes on some things. So for instance, I voted yes on the Department of Health and Human Services budget because it was $100. And I said, that's perfect. I voted yes on the EAGLE, the Department of Energy Great Lakes, or Environment Great Lakes and Energy. These are the people who tend to come around and harass people because you're trying to do a construction project, but there are birds within 300 miles of you, so you can't do it anymore. They have been the worst, most aggressive agency the entire time I've been there so far. I get more calls from constituents who've been harassed by EAGLE than any other department. So I voted on a $100 budget for EAGLE, MDHHS, there might have been one other. So there are other bills that have come through. I mean, I was talking with my wife on the way down here, so if you haven't said hi to Allison or didn't notice that she's here, she's back, she's in action, right? Better than ever. We were talking on the way over here about how the Michigan legislature did take up and pass in both chambers, and maybe Representative DeSanto will correct me, I don't actually know if the governor signed it or not, but we've got a new law about hands-free driving, right? So you can't have your phone in your hand for any reason. Is it all done? It is going to take effect on June 25th. I think it's the only thing we changed was the enactment date. So be aware that as you're driving, it's now going to be a ticketable offense. This is one more revenue-generating activity for the police, one more way that the insurance companies will have an opportunity to jack up your rates. And it's a pretty extreme one. People have different opinions about could this enhance public safety, whatever, but we couldn't get any traction on making some common sense adjustments to it. Let's say you're driving down the highway, you are in a dead stop traffic jam. You could turn, your car's idling, you're completely stopped, and you wanna pick your phone up and check for the next exit or something. If your phone is in your hand and you're using it in that activity, and a police officer sees you, you could be ticketed for it. There are very few exceptions. It's a complete 100% hands-free. John?
So you can still have a Big Mac in your hand and a drink, just not a phone.
You can do all sorts of things. You can do all sorts of things in the car. Just those cell phones have to be somehow, and that's another thing about these laws. Another reason they're bad is that they're not very thoughtful about what the future looks like, right? A few years back when we didn't have any opportunity to do voice activation on our phones, that was a totally different way that we interface with our phones than now. What's it gonna look like a couple years down the road, and how's that gonna interface with whatever the law is in the books? So anyway, I was against that one, but.
Do you know what the fine is gonna be, just so I can prepare?
Is it $200? It is $200, and I'm sure, like I said, insurance will come after you after that too.
Yeah, the seatbelt was only 90,
What were
wasn't
the
it?
points?
Or
Did
did
you
that
tell
go
them about
away?
the points? I believe it's,
I don't know what the points
yeah,
are.
the points are pretty impactful on your driver's license.
So it is, yeah, so it is gonna be in the point
I think it's
system.
3 points.
No, the seatbelt's $100, right?
Yeah.
And no points.
So, be aware, that's coming down. Other things that we took, we didn't, okay, this is maybe what I'll leave you with, or I can keep going on and on. But this week, and I'm gonna tie it back to the budget conversation. This week, the Senate, we had session, it's on the calendar, you can look it up, you can see, was the Senate in session this week? It says yes. The truth is, we had no attendance and no voting all week long. And the reason is because I'm not sure I get this organization right. I think I have it right at this point. I think it's the Detroit Regional Chamber of Commerce hosts an event on Mackinac Island right now. It is their big annual political event. And it is a very highly attended by a lot of politicians. And most of them wanted to go there, and doing something like going to Lansing and voting would get in the way of a good time on Mackinac. But more importantly, I will promise you this, because I'll just tie this back to the budget conversation. We pass these phony budgets out of committee, we pass them on the floor, the component budgets. When it's all said and done, those budgets will be, the reason that conference committee is so important, the reason they like that mechanism, those budgets will be negotiated behind closed doors. You will never see the action. It will never see the light of day. We put 176 amendments forward for people to be able to watch, to see the language that we included, so you can argue about it. You could look at some of them that I voted for. You might disagree, but it's all right there for people to see. The way the budget's actually gonna be decided through this conference committee is gonna be through private negotiations that happen behind closed doors. And I guarantee you, as we sit here today, some of those conversations about how $80 billion of Michigan taxpayer money is gonna be spent, some of those negotiations are going on right now on Mackinac Island. I promise you, that's what's happening. It's not the whole thing, but it's a totally broken system right now. It remains broken. We've got a lot of work to do. So how do I come back from this, David, and give you some hope or some inspiration? We've got a lot of work to do. I mean, groups like this, I like that I can come sit here and actually just hear some local inspiration as well, right? People that are working in their communities, tackling problems that are right there in front of you, and say, how do we get involved? I don't know if I've been to a political thing the last 2 years that was as wholesome as hearing what Toys for Tots is doing, and just the rundown of, this is how it works and this is what we do. And so thank you for being here. I know, the other community events, going, trying to solve problems in your own community. But it all comes back to people across all of our neighborhoods, all of our communities, whether it's the county level, our townships. We've got to get people involved, and that doesn't always look the same, but people need to get involved, they need to get engaged. People in this room, I don't think this is bad. Attendance is down a little bit tonight, a little bit lower, but people in this room, we really do all need to go out and engage our neighbors and really encourage them to get involved in something. I mean, there's a lot out there worth fighting for. It's not always what's happening in Lansing, even what's happening in the federal government. It could be happening right here in our own communities. But I said right after we saw the election results last November, when we saw that the state was gonna be in full Democrat control, it's gonna get worse before it gets better. It is. And they have moved swiftly, they've enacted a pretty radical leftist agenda. It's gonna hurt the state a lot. And it's gonna be up to all of us to say, what do we do with that? How do we fix it? Well, it's gonna take a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of community. And and who knows what that looks like on the other side, but at some point in time, maybe it becomes more productive to start like survival stores and stuff, I don't know. But anybody have any questions for me of what's going on in Lansing?
Budget behind public stores, what happens to the open meetings act or whatever, that would apply?
It doesn't apply.
You said something about starting survival stores, you saying that the economy's gonna be going on too?
Do I think our economy's gonna go up to? Yeah, I mean, look, we have what, honey? We have 4 baby goats right now. My wife loves animals, so she wants to get more animals all the time. And I just have one rule: we can get animals, they just have to serve a purpose in the apocalypse. So she wanted to get goats, and I said, they gotta be good milk goats. And they're good, they're great, they're great milkers. We've got chickens are good layers. Our turkeys, we butchered a few of them a couple weeks back. Had a good, after he was dressed out, our Tom was 45 pounds of meat. So, I think people should be very thoughtful about, and we're actually far from it, but I think people should be very thoughtful about how sustainable your lifestyle is. It's, how did the federal, the debt limit, what did we raise by, 2 trillion?
No,
It's not my space,
It's
but.
a bandwidth, there's no debt limit.
There's no debt limit, it's,
Actually, it's unlimited.
it is, I mean, that's the point.
Yes, they gave all their power to Congress,
Yeah.
executive.
So,
Completely against
I mean, in 2006, I was working at the Heritage Foundation just as an intern, as a college thing. And one of the big projects that my part of the office was focused on was unfunded liabilities. That was kind of like my introduction to, I hadn't read as much about this. And back then, I think the unfunded liability of the federal government, meaning is that if you hold things static, if you say we're gonna grow at the same pace we do, we're gonna have the same revenue increases, we're gonna have the same spending, so we're not talking about future expenditures that are part of the future budgets. We're talking about future expenditures that the current system of government has obligated itself to pay, but does not have the future expected revenue to pay for. Back in 2006, I think the number was about $90 trillion of unfunded liabilities. I mean, we talk about right now that it's, whatever, $30 trillion of debt, but that's the small part. Unfunded liabilities now, I think, are much closer to $200 trillion. I mean, it's funny money like crazy right now. And almost every year, the backstop of these state budgets, which then trickles down to the, local economies, is some sort of new act that spends a couple $1 trillion here and there, right? Whether it's the American Rescue Plan or then the inflation. That's kind of my favorite one. Inflation Reduction Act. We're gonna reduce inflation by spending trillions of dollars, right? So, I think it's all comes back to just hope for the best, prepare for the worst. I do think people should be very, very aware that the system right now that we have is not sustainable. One more question?
Well, not a question, just a comment as to where we're headed. I've got a bank note from the National Bank of Zimbabwe that I use for a bookmark, and it's for $35 trillion, and it won't get you a cup of coffee in Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so it's post-hyperinflation, ever seen stories, they had this challenge in Venezuela. We do have, interestingly, I think it's worth watching, keeping our finger on the pulse of what might tell us when there's a problem or whatever. One of the things that's really troubling in this space, this is so far out the realm of what state legislators do, but the reason people have always thought this is impossible before the United States ever end up in a situation like that, is because we use our military to go around and drop a lot of bombs around the world and, you know, flex our might enough that everybody's, number one, scared of us, and number two, really ever since almost the entire post-war period, meaning World War II, we've been able to maintain our status as the world's reserve currency. And one of the things that we're seeing changing right now is a push away from that. And if that happens, or the degree to which that's successful, really changes the future for, you know, I mean, for the stability of the currency. Yeah.
The people themselves have already rejected the dollar to buying gold and silver, putting their assets.
Well, some people have, yeah, some people have. All right, are we ready to move on? Thank you guys. If you haven't checked out my Facebook page, it's just, I think it's still Jonathan Lindsey for State Senate, because they won't let us update it to say Senator Lindsey, because, okay, one more story from Lansing. I'm working with these communists up there, right? And I want, like, everything that I do, I go up there and I say, I look for the trap. They set these traps for you. They say, okay, we, the central staff, will make a Facebook page for you. And I'm like, well, who's gonna be in charge of that? Well, we'll handle it all for you. It'll be easy to do. I said, do I get to control what goes on there? Well, you can write things for us and then we'll, you know, decide in due course. I'm like, no, I want my Facebook page. I want to control it. Well, then they send a lawyer after me and they say, you need to be aware of these 18 things that could happen if you continue to maintain your own Facebook page. You could be taken to jail for this and you could get charged with that. I'm like, I don't care. You're not running my Facebook page. But what they did do was create a Facebook page that says Senator Jonathan Lindsey, and I can't get them to delete it. And so I can't change my Facebook page to say Senator Jonathan Lindsey. So it's an ongoing battle. But it happens like everything that goes on up there, I try to distance myself from, you know, their system is trying to pull you in. Hopefully Jim will confirm some of this stuff. They're trying to pull you in and say, we've got this resource for you. We'll write an op-ed for you. We'll have the caucus. And I do use some of their resources. You know, if we have an idea and we want to say, hey, can people help us draft some communication about this? But you know, it's really challenging because that's how they control people as well. And I have learned the hard way. I mean, I kind of always had the instinct that I don't want them running things, but I had a situation where we had, I think it was Senate Bill 47 that came through. It came to the Senate a month or two ago. Went to the House. It came back. I was tracking it because this is the one that was modifying. It's another modification to Michigan's civil rights law. And what this one was saying is that they're going to redefine the term sex. Right, the civil rights law is protecting people based on certain classes, saying you can't discriminate against someone based on their sex, based on their race, certain other things that traditionally have been a list of things that are immutable characteristics about who you are. Right? Well, they want to update the definition of the word sex to include health outcomes, like whether or not you've had an abortion. Going to be part of the definition of sex. And then later on in the same law that they're amending, it says that you cannot discriminate against someone, including a company discriminating against them in their benefits plan that are offered, right? Well, I put these things together and I say, it looks to me like you're saying you can't discriminate against somebody based on whether they've had a child or they've had an abortion. Those things have to be treated equally. And you specifically call out benefit plans. To me, this is an open door to say, somebody who's working for a company who has a maternity leave policy that says, we're gonna pay for 2 months for maternity leave. I believe this is an open door. I don't know how this will shake out in court, but I think that the law opens the door for somebody to walk in and say, I had an abortion yesterday, I deserve 2 months of maternity. Or I took the pill, right, or whatever, or the morning after pill or whatever. I need 2 months off paid. So I wrote up this, the story's actually about the staff and them controlling me and stuff, but I wrote up this press release on this topic, but I worked with them and we were gonna post it on the website, and I worked it up like weeks before the governor ever signed it, but I said, we're gonna set a trigger on this one, we're gonna release it the day the governor signs this. And sure enough, that day came around and, I received an email suspiciously, like, just before the governor actually signs it, saying, oh, we had lawyers look at your press release and we don't think that that's what the law is actually gonna do. Or the language, this is from the Republican caucus staff, right? They said, it doesn't look like that is the intent of this legislation. I said, I don't care what you think their intent is. Yeah, just giving you examples of, you know, it is something, where it's a constant battle up there every day, but I like fighting with people on those things, so it's still good for me. But I also just appreciate everybody here who's been very supportive in that, and I hope you're gonna hear some fun stories too from another guy who's been fighting like heck up there. So thank you again for having me, David.